For decades, the North Atlantic partners dictated the rules of global stability. That consensus is rapidly eroding as domestic discord and foreign policy fatigue restrict the West's ability to maintain the international order. Today, China is rapidly accelerating into that void. This chart tracks the economic trajectories of the United States and China, mapping exactly when their lines cross. China is projected to surpass the U.S. in sheer market exchange rates, becoming the world's most powerful economy by the early 2030s. Geopolitical analysts began forecasting a grim outcome for this exact transition, a world carved into two uncompromising spheres of influence, where the friction between Washington and Beijing leaves virtually no room for neutral ground. This places immense pressure on developing nations in Africa, South America, and Asia. They risk being crushed between them in a volatile zero-sum standoff. This math pointed straight to a bleak two-player deadlock. Then, a massive economic data release disrupted the calculus completely. In 2026, the International Monetary Fund published economic projections that caught the world's attention and rewrote the traditional US-China narrative. Looking at nominal GDP, India reaches $4.51 trillion, surpassing Japan as the fourth largest economy. Adjusted for purchasing power parity, India's bar surges past Japan and Germany, securing the number 3 spot with a size of over $19 trillion. Purchasing power parity measures the actual domestic buying power within a country. A meal that costs $20 in Frankfurt might cost $3 in Mumbai. Because India's domestic costs of living are significantly lower, its wealth generates much more real-world output than direct currency exchange rates suggest. Climbing these ranks represents more than a statistical milestone. For the first time, the logic of a two-power world faces a massive, independent variable that doesn't fit neatly into either camp. The timing of this ascent stands in sharp contrast to the plateauing of legacy powers. Germany's economy has struggled through consecutive years of recession, while Japan battles decades of deflation and an aging, shrinking workforce. India, meanwhile, is expanding at a 6.2% annual growth rate, the fastest among all major economies. This momentum is fueled by a demographic dividend, a vast, young, and increasingly educated population stepping into their prime productive years. Two distinct engines are pulling this weight. First, an established IT and software services sector that consistently draws foreign capital. Second, a massive government-backed production-linked incentive push that is successfully pulling global manufacturing supply chains onto the subcontinent. You can see the physical reality of this data in the concrete and steel rapidly assembling across the country. Aggressive government investment in roads, railways, and ports is turning mass urbanization into immediate economic output. While older empires stall or actively contract, India operates as the only major global power aggressively expanding its baseline economic capacity year over year. Raw domestic wealth only matters globally if a nation can weaponize it to secure its borders and project influence outward. The Lowy Institute's 2025 Asia Power Index tracks exactly how well countries convert their resources into geopolitical weight. In their latest release, India recorded a historic 2-point overall gain, the largest leap of any nation assessed. This pyramid maps the new power hierarchy. The United States and China occupy the top tier. But India has pulled completely away from legacy players like Japan and Russia, occupying its own unique middle tier, officially securing the title of Asia's third major power. India channels its purchasing power directly into hard military assets. The government is steadily increasing its defense spending, modernizing its naval fleets, and rapidly scaling up domestic indigenous weapons manufacturing. By self-funding its military modernization, India has procured the hard power required to assert its own regional dominance and command a permanent seat at the highest levels of international decision-making. This overlapping economic and military strength gives New Delhi a rare commodity in modern diplomacy, the leverage to say no without consequence, actively rejecting the pressure to join restrictive traditional alliances. Instead, it pursues a strategy of fierce, multi-directional independence. India maintains heavily guarded, lucrative ties with Russia to secure resources, while actively challenging Chinese border assertions and naval expansion in Asia. Looking at this gathering of global leaders, you see India's physical and diplomatic centrality in action. New Delhi engages deeply with Western partners, like the Quad Security Dialogue, to counter Beijing, without ever agreeing to become a subordinate, treaty-bound ally to Washington. It requires immense diplomatic agility to balance competing superpowers simultaneously, constantly shifting weight to maximize national interest without losing stability. With the fourth largest nominal economy on Earth, India possesses the gravity to dictate its own terms. It simply does not need to accept the role of a junior partner to anyone. This independence offers a lifeline to dozens of smaller nations across Africa, South America, and Asia. When Washington and Beijing demand allegiance, these countries desperately look for a way to stay out of the crossfire. The vision of a strictly bipolar world relies on a reality that is increasingly out of step with the global distribution of power. A second, more fragmented layer of influence is emerging beneath the superpowers. India steps into the gap as a viable third alternative. It champions the non-interventionist, developmental interests of the Global South, while integrating with the existing rules-based international system rather than trying to tear it down. As middle powers command an ever-growing share of global GDP, the old superpowers are discovering they can no longer easily buy, bully, or dictate the behavior of the developing world. India's ascent to the economic top four anchors a shift toward a complex, multipolar century, providing the Global South with a heavyweight center of gravity that complicates the path to any single power dominance.